to another piece of breaking news that's coming in, and this is an India Today exclusive tonight. India Today has now accessed what we are describing as one of the most explosive reports on ISIS, Islamic State. The report explaining how the desperate terror grouping is trying to lure Indian Muslims and using them as cannon fodder. The report explains the ISIS, after luring young people, burns their passports, prevents them from fleeing. The Islamic State is now using these young Indian Muslims, according to the report, or is attempting to use them to try and see if they can be used in the fight in Syria. At least 6 Indians, we are told, as per this report, have died while fighting for ISIS. And there is credible information, according to this report, that there are 23 Indians who are currently fighting for the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. This is a Home Ministry report that we have accessed at the moment.
The 3-page report which has been accessed by India Today clearly talks about how ISIS is simply slowly trying to spread its tentacles to the Indian subcontinent, and we already know they've spread over to Bangladesh. But what is also more important regarding this particular report is about how 23 Indians have already joined the fight of ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Now 6 of the people have died, but the document here clearly talks about credible sources from outside which have said that Indians who are willing to join ISIS abroad are actually just menial workers, small workers, and obviously put to small menial jobs.
Also traveling straight across to Brussels, which, remember, is the Belgian capital, is now under a terror lockdown for a 3rd consecutive day. 21 terror suspects now arrested. More raids are taking place across the city in the aftermath of the Paris attacks. French authorities claiming that Paris attacker Salah Abdeslam still could be in the capital of Belgium and could be heavily armed and probably in a suicide vest. Brussels still on the highest level of alerts, universities, schools and the metro system remaining closed. The city began a crackdown after more than 130 died and 350 were injured in the Paris attacks 10 days ago. I want to go to Jennifer Baker, EU correspondent, joining me from Brussels. Jennifer, give us a sense of what the police is really looking for today.
Good evening. Well, we saw some crackdowns over the weekend, as you said, and the city has gone into what they call a level 4 terror alert, and that's the highest alert possible. What's interesting to note, however, is that the areas surrounding Brussels, so where the airport is, for example, are still only on a level 3. And all the EU institutions and the NATO headquarters, which are, of course, in Brussels, they're all still on level 3. Now, the police last night had a serious raid, which took place across 19 different districts in Brussels, and they then arrested a further 5 people, bringing the total arrested to 21. But as you pointed out, their chief suspect, Salah Abdeslam, is still on the run. Now, there were some suggestions that he was in the Molenbeek area, but it now appears he maybe has left the Brussels area. The last news we heard was that he may have actually taken a car and heading towards the German border, but nothing has yet been confirmed, and the authorities are still assessing the situation and will come back to us within the next hour to say whether we will actually see a 4th day of lockdown. Of course, what this means for the people in Brussels is a very, very tense situation on the streets.
And who are these raids being conducted against? Are there more groups that are based in Brussels that could have links to Paris, or are these simply suspects, people linked to ISIS, possibly?
Well, the current raids are very much linked to the Paris attacks. We had the Abdeslam brothers were definitely considered to be a key component of those attacks. Interestingly, one of the brothers went on Belgian television to appeal for his fugitive brother to give himself up. He said, "We would rather see him in jail than in a cemetery." What was interesting about the raids last night is that, of course, they took place around the centre of Brussels, which is considered the most sensitive and the most likely place for an attack to take place. But also in other suburbs, this notorious suburb of Molenbeek, which has got an awful lot of attention in the press after the Paris attacks, but also in other parts of Brussels, including an area like Forêt, which is not considered to be a particularly Islamic centre or a particularly poor area. So it really is across the whole city of Brussels. And the Interior Minister saying that they must have had quite a lot of support across the whole Brussels region rather than just, this one hotspot of Molenbeek that everyone keeps talking about.
Jennifer, appreciate your joining us to give us the very latest there from Brussels, a story that we will keep tracking here on the news today. Let's take a
जहाँ तक यादें याद आती रहेगी